Good afternoon, everybody. It's so lovely to see so many of your faces in the crowd. And thank you for joining us for this conversation on Afrophobia and with the run-in question, why am I no longer talking about race with white people? And this running question was inspired by Yahneake Sterling's book, which I began reading recently, and it kind of brought, kind of erected a lot of feelings and emotions in me, and I was like, okay, there needs to be a conversation about this. So I've invited 4 of my colleagues here with me for us to have a conversation about it this afternoon. It will be a 45 minutes conversation, and the last 15 minutes we'll open the floor for you guys to join in on the conversation if you have any further questions that you would like to ask, or if you would like to bring up a point that we might or may miss. Want some water? Yeah, so, perfect. So to begin, I'm just going to go around and I'm going to ask you guys to just introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there. So we'll start with Yannick. Yeah.
Hey, thank you for showing up, everyone. My name is Yannick, and I'm based in Copenhagen. I do a lot of decolonial organizing activism in a collective called Maroonage or Marinage. I also organize a lot of spaces for queer and trans black people and people of color. And I'm part of various networks organizing against cuts to social housing, as well as deportations of migrants. I am trans and I'm queer, and I go by they them pronouns, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah. And Fatima?
My name is Fatima, and again, thank you for inviting me, Jason, and thanks for everyone to come. I'm Fatima Osborne. I'm also based in Copenhagen, and I'm an activist, but within the last few years, I've focused my activism on blackness and pro-blackness, and I'm a founder of a space, safe space for black women once a month called the Black Women's Sanctuary, and that's it really.
Thank you. Sonnie?
Okay, yeah, thanks. Hi, my name is Sonnie Gondwe, and I'm Jason's friend, so I'd like to say thank you for inviting me and asking me to be part of the panelist. And I live in Malmo, and I'm originally from Zambia, and I've lived both in Zambia and Sweden.
With that knowledge, going to work every day was really difficult. And then it became worse when one of my white colleagues, as I was sitting in the kitchen having a fika by myself, he came to me and he said to me, I think black women are so sexy. When you walk by, I like to see your ass. Yeah, you're so sexy. And I felt so powerless to say anything, to speak up for myself, to do anything, because in that moment, I already knew that there was no one there who would stand up for me. And I felt powerless. And this feeling was new to me because had I been in my own country, I would have spoken up, I would have made the report to the relevant authorities, I would have done something about it. But suddenly I felt that in this country, as a black woman, I had no power. I was a woman, 1, and 2, I was black. To stand up against white solidarity would have been difficult for me.
Fatima?
Well, I think for me, also like Sonnie, I had I grew up in Denmark when I was 12 years old, but I have also I remember how it was living in Somalia. I'm originally from Somalia, and I don't think I had the awareness of this whole my skin and this shame or whatever that society was slowly imposing on me. I didn't come with that, you know, because clearly I was in Africa, living like an African person. So, but one of the moments where I really woke up and I thought, okay, this is really a problem, was when I'm an optometrist, and when I came to the School of Optometry in Denmark to actually enroll, the principal told me that as a favor for me, he wanted to warn me that I could not complete this because I was a black woman and I'm also a Muslim and I had the headscarf on. And he said, because you look the way you look and you have a headscarf on, you are just not, this career is not for you, because this career is it's always been white. Primarily in the 50s, it was all men, but then women came on, white women, and they had the struggle, and it's not ready for people like you. So you're not gonna get praktik. That was the thing. You can go for a year and study, but you're gonna waste that year because you're not gonna get praktik. Nobody's gonna take you. So for me, that was, first of all, a shock to me, because I have always thought to myself that I'm overreacting. Society was telling me like everything I was feeling, all the microaggressions that I was feeling, it was just like something that I had made up in my mind. So, you know, I believed that, and I was like, Denmark wants the best for me because they took me on as a refugee, like, and now, you know, I want to go to further education, and of course they're gonna, like, you know. So that's when I knew that I wasn't gonna be ever an equal, but I also knew that I had to change it. And so I could either go home and be heartbroken, which I was, because I was really heartbroken. But at the same time, I was like, what if I do that, what about my kids? Like, in 20 years, when they are in the same situation as me and they're gonna be stopped from going to further education, then what? So, but I became an optometrist.
And Yannick, as a transgender binary black person, you know, what has it been like for you? You know, what has been one of the roughest? The same question, actually. Yeah.
I think actually maybe I will speak about it from the position of being mixed black.
Yeah.
You know, because as a black person, but with a a white parent as well, I think for me, and this will be controversial, but for me, I think a lot of people don't realize how terrorizing it can be for mixed black kids growing up with a family that essentially hates black people or people of color, right? So the hatred and the racism is so visual, and I mean it's also, I mean, in my parts of my black family that's not mixed, you know, which is most of them, you know, there's anti-black racism as well. Like, you know, black people, we hate ourselves too, you know, with colorism and everything that comes with it in this world. But, you know, so for me, it's really been from the moment that I was born that, you know, my grandparents, great-grandparents, cousins, occasionally my mother, the sort of the element of whiteness and the sort of, and also my dad being blind to a lot of these things, right? Was like seduced by the power that lies in whiteness as well, and what it gave him that he never had access to in the same way, right? Which is not to place blame or something like that, but so to me, there's been a profound alienation from my white family, also from my black family, because every time I talked about my black family as my white family, I wasn't allowed to do that, because then, you know, white family would make it all about themselves. What about us? They're trying to, you know, and whereas the black family was like, okay, cool. Like, no problem, we love. And so for me, the sort of, what has been the worst experience or something like that, it's being born. but it's the being born into a society in which that it doesn't want to tackle on racism or anti-black racism, but it wants to see mixing as a solution to racism, but it doesn't solve racism because I'm still marked as a black kid going out into the world, and my dad is too, and all my family. And that is what I need to encounter. The institutions, economic, political, cultural, everything, that is what needs to be fought. You know, people can have kids however they want, you know, but it doesn't, not however, but like, you know, so yeah, if that makes sense as an answer.
Thank you. Just to, you know, somebody said something recently to me that, you know, to end racism or discrimination, it's not people of color that's going to do it. You know, it takes the white majority, it's them who needs to convince it. So just to get back to the running headline, how has your interactions been with, you know, your white counterparts, like in terms of, you know, sharing and relating your experience as a black person in Denmark or in Sweden? How has those interactions been? And anybody can feel free to, you know, jump in and, you know, answer whatever you're answering.
Yeah.
But like, I know you want to.
So I might as well jump in. I think when I came back, let me just give an example of, for example, dating. Something which everyone does, which is common. So it's like, okay, dating. When I came back, I said, oh, great. I went out one time to the club and I met this girl, and Swedish, and we got talking, and yeah, we clicked. So gradually, as we start talking, and then she says something which I ignored it. She's like, you know what, most black guys I've dated are not like you, as in, and I can say I'm privileged because I come from an educated black family. And that is not so common in Europe when you find like my grandparents, everyone had been through an education. So we have a self-identity in that sense. And we're raised to carry ourselves in a particular way. You can't do this, you can't do that. So it's almost Western way of carrying myself because they went to schools in the Western society. So she's like, oh, I would like you to meet my parents and my family, they would love you. So I was like, okay, great. And I go there and they have food on the table and I look at it and they're like, oh, hi, we're glad you're here. They're really friendly. And I was like, this is good. And then they were like, this must be a lot of food for you, right? I wish I was the tolerant type. So I just stood up and I was like, excuse me. I stood up. Went to the door, grabbed my shoes, walked out of the door, deleted the number, and blocked. So when I came home, my aunt was asking me, and we talked about this, like, why, maybe you should have opened. I said, look, at the end of the day, if the family is that ignorant in this day and age, I'm going to place her in the position to choose between me or them, and that is not fair. Because that is something she should have sorted out a long time ago, the moment she decided to date outside her own race. And when I went there with an intention of meeting a family, joy, and I didn't have any prejudices. So for someone to give me prejudice in return, I felt a bit insulted, and I didn't feel like I needed to waste my energy in explaining things of what is supposed to go on. So I just left and deleted. So my encounters have been strange, but you're made aware that I'm white, you're black, and it's just not natural, which I find like it's very difficult. We can't talk about things that exist. We pretend race is not there and race is not an issue. And I think because of that, then we can never address things for what they are. And thus we can't even talk to our families when they're wrong and change their views and their prejudices. That's what I learned from that experience.
So now we'll open the floor, everybody to join in on the conversation. If you have any questions or any concerns, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sakira.
Hey.
Okay, sorry. I'm just bubbling into each of your stories because they're all extremely relatable. And I wanted to throw my 2 cents in. I am really, really selective about which white people I talk about race with, because I think white people are quite broken. Like, I think whiteness is a pathology that is wholly supported. And kind of like, you know, you're born a human, and then you come up in this system that chips away at your humanity. And it chips away at your ability to feel and to empathize for other people. And so, like, trying to reason with a pathology, you know, like you're on your own broken record. And maybe if I say it different, maybe if I calm down, maybe if I like, and then, you know, I find myself trying to find all of these tools to see if I can be even more human, to like show you something. But more times than not, it's not there. Like some kind of psychopathy, it's just not there. And so it's like talking to somebody who's in their own straitjacket, and then they can't hear you. So you can't say, hey, this is how I feel, and then like blink, 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 sure.
Yeah.
And then another white person will say the same thing, and then suddenly it's relatable, and like you're watching crazy play out. Really, like you're watching it play out. And then there are like, I think some of the scariest kinds are the allies, who you march around with the flags. They're like anti-everything, but never pro-redefining whiteness. No. Ever. And there's how can we help, like, shut up. Really, just shut up. I mean that from the bottom of my soul, because people of color have been holding space to help each other heal since the beginning of this whole thing. And yet white people, I feel like, are still like, but what? But like, what can I do? But like, how can I, like, heal yourself, fix yourself. If you don't know how to employ people who know how to.
Read books.
Right, read books.
Yeah.
Basic, like really basic. Find yourself a therapist, preferably a therapist of color, because white therapists usually don't have those tools either, because they come up in the same systems that you're coming up in, and pay them to do the labor with you. Like, to me, these questions are like like the answers are so basic that like I find myself coming into this pathology, and it's upsetting, of course, because it affects my life in a real way. And I can't just be like in Pleasantville pretending like shit isn't cool when like the world is burning around me. Like, it's just not possible. But anyway, I say all of that to say I am extremely selective about who I talk about race with and my experience with, because more times than not, I just feel like I bear all of my feelings, all of my emotions, and I'm like hit with a doorknob. And so what's the point? What's the point? Anyway, my two cents.
Thank
That's
you.
absolutely. Yeah, I want to just quickly say something to that. It's also like, I think the tiresome of that is also like sometimes when I try and explain something, and then when you created this whole like, oh, that exists, okay, and then you also you're expected to help them, educate them, and like bring the solution as well. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. It's tiresome. Excuse. Say that again.
For me, a lack of knowledge is not an excuse to behave the way you do. The knowledge exists, find it.
And these people.
Also, can I add? And also just like, you know, the excuse that, oh, but some people are just old, and I'm like, do you know decolonization happened like when my grandparents were born? You know, like you have, like there have been movements challenging this shit. You know, it's not like a new thing, but they act like, oh, I didn't know you felt this way. How could you not? Like people like fought off the British, the Danish, you know, and all the rest of the colonizers, right? But they just don't see it.
Okay, so we'll take one more, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just touching on that whole thing about, the description of angry black women. I moved to Malma, I'm from London and Nigeria, so I've got loads of things going on inside anyway. But I think that starts nursery school level.
Mhm.
A black kid who is extra active and so happy would be described as aggressive, whereas a white kid or another kid would be like, oh, that's just boisterous. I think that starts at a level whereby from a young age, we are told anyway, you need to shut up because you're being too loud in the class, whereas another kid would be saying they're expressive. I think that starts from a very, very young age. I mean, in Malama here, I'm new to Malama, like I said, I find that a lot of people are quite passive. And being from London, I was quite shocked to hear that situation you mentioned, because I feel like London is a melting pot where there's so many, I mean, you hear Chinese, English, Pidgin English, all sorts of the train and bus. But over here, being new to Malama, when people find out, because I'm married to a Swedish guy, the first thing I've been asked was, oh, so will you become a citizen then? I'm like, chick, I'm European. I don't need to be.
I don't need your passport.
I don't need your passport. But also as well, I go out with my husband to eat, and automatically they give the bill to him, not knowing that I'm the breadwinner in the family. So I think that from a young age, it's kind of like in schools, in nurseries, it needs to be taught that the equality needs to start from a young age, because what's happening now is you're growing up, the generation of kids are growing up where there are black kids who absolutely do not like any other race. I've been to some meetings whereby we've got black kids who are spitting venom, but the same venom that they've heard over and over again about them. So we need to be very careful and try to start introducing this at a very low level to kids and start treating kids equal and not tell that black kid she's being too loud, say she's boisterous, just as you would say to the white kid, because I think that starts from a very, very young age.